The emergency fighter craft was smaller than Sarah had expected, barely large enough for a single pilot and equipped with basic weapons systems. As she strapped herself into the pilot's seat, her hands shook slightly. Not from fear, she realized, but from adrenaline. The same feeling she'd had when diving into unexplored ocean trenches where one mistake could mean death. "Fighter 7, this is Admiral Corvash," came the voice through her communications system. "Final systems check. Are you certain about this course of action?" Sarah ran through the simplified controls one more time. The Alliance had designed this craft for emergency use by unenhanced personnel, which meant even someone with her inferior genetics could operate it. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Admiral, I'm as ready as I'll ever be," she replied. Surprised by how steady her voice sounded through the fighter bay's force field, she could see the 3 Vorthan destroyers approaching. They moved in perfect formation, their tactics no doubt calculated by enhanced Vorthan minds for maximum efficiency. Everything about their approach was textbook perfect. "All fighters, launch when ready," Admiral Corvash commanded. "Remember, our objective is to buy time for the Harmony's Edge to reach the hyperspace jump point." Sarah watched as 6 other fighters launched from the ship's bays. All piloted by enhanced Alliance officers, their movements precise and coordinated as they formed attack formations. She took a deep breath and engaged her fighter's engines. "Fighter 7 launching," she announced. And suddenly she was in space. The sensation was unlike anything she'd experienced in her ocean dives. The infinite darkness around her was broken only by stars and the looming shapes of the enemy vessels. Her fighter sensors immediately began tracking multiple Vorthan fighter craft launching from the destroyer bays. "All fighters, maintain formation Delta 7, came the voice of Squadron Leader Vexstar, an enhanced Draconian pilot. "Engage primary targets according to Tactical Protocol Sigma 4. Sarah watched as the Alliance fighters moved with mechanical precision, following optimized attack patterns that had been calculated for maximum effectiveness. The Vorthan fighters responded with equally precise countermaneuvers, their enhanced pilots processing the Alliance tactics and adapting in real time, but Sarah didn't follow any protocols. Instead, she did something that made no tactical sense whatsoever. She flew straight toward the largest Vorthan destroyer. "Fighter 7, what are you doing?" Squadron Leader Vexstar's voice was sharp with alarm. "Return to formation immediately." Sarah ignored the command. Her fighter sensors screamed warnings as the destroyer's point defense systems locked onto her small craft. Any rational pilot would have veered off, sought cover, or at least tried evasive maneuvers. Instead, Sarah increased speed and began flying in what could only be described as a completely random pattern. She rolled left for no reason, dove suddenly without provocation, and changed direction in ways that made no sense from a tactical standpoint, aboard the lead Vorthan destroyer. Enhanced Commander Zekmoth stared at his tactical display with growing confusion. His genetically optimized mind could process and counter any logical attack pattern within microseconds. But the small Alliance fighter approaching his ship wasn't following any pattern at all. "Tactical analysis," he commanded his equally enhanced crew. "Commander, the fighter's movements appear to be completely random," his tactical officer reported, his chitinous features expressing puzzlement. "Our prediction algorithms cannot establish a pattern to counter." "Then target it directly. Our point defense systems should easily destroy such a small craft." But as the Vorthan weapons systems tried to lock onto Sarah's fighter, they encountered a problem they'd never faced before. Their targeting computers were designed to predict movement patterns, to anticipate where an enemy would be based on logical tactical decisions. Sarah wasn't making logical decisions. She suddenly dove toward the destroyer's hull, skimming so close to the surface that the ship's own sensors lost her in the electromagnetic interference. Then, without warning, she popped up and fired her small weapons directly at what appeared to be a random section of the destroyer's armor. "What is she targeting?" Commander Zekmoth demanded. "There are no critical systems in that section." But Sarah wasn't targeting anything specific. She was simply doing what felt right in the moment, following instincts honed by years of navigating unpredictable underwater currents and dangerous marine life. Meanwhile, the other Alliance fighters were struggling against the Vorthan squadrons. The enhanced pilots on both sides moved with superhuman precision, but the Vorthan's superior optimization was giving them a clear advantage. Squadron Leader Vexstar watched in disbelief as 3 of his pilots were shot down in the first minutes of engagement. All remaining fighters, implement tactical protocol. His words were cut off as he noticed something impossible on his sensors. Fighter 7, the craft piloted by the unenhanced human, was somehow still alive despite flying directly into the heaviest concentration of enemy fire. How is she still flying? He whispered. Dr. Zethkar, monitoring the battle from the medical bay, was asking himself the same question. Every tactical simulation suggested that Sarah's fighter should have been destroyed within seconds. Yet she continued to weave through Vorthan fire with movements that defied all logic. Her flight patterns are completely chaotic, he reported to Admiral Corvash over the communications channel. No enhanced pilot would ever fly in such an inefficient manner. Is that why she's surviving? The Admiral asked. It's the only explanation I can offer. The Vorthan targeting systems appear unable to predict her movements. Back in space, Sarah was operating on pure instinct. When her sensors detected incoming fire, she didn't calculate the optimal evasive maneuver. Instead, she followed the same kind of intuitive responses that had kept her alive when a massive predator fish had attacked her, submersible in the deepest ocean. Trenches. Sometimes she dove when logic said she should climb. Sometimes she accelerated when wisdom suggested retreat. And sometimes she did the most dangerous thing of all, she stopped moving entirely, letting momentum carry her in a straight line while Vorthan weapons fired at where their computers predicted she would be. Fighter 7 to all Alliance craft. Sarah's voice came across the communications channel, slightly breathless but determined. Stop following your tactical protocols. They're reading your moves. Squadron Leader Vexstar's enhanced mind recoiled at the suggestion. Fighter 7, tactical protocols exist for optimal engagement efficiency. We cannot simply look around you. Sarah interrupted. How's that optimal efficiency working out? Vexstar checked his tactical display and felt his optimized emotional dampener struggle to contain his dismay. Half his squadron was gone, and the Vorthan fighters were systematically destroying the remainder using perfectly calculated counter-tactics. Fighter 7, what do you suggest? Sarah's voice carried a hint of something the enhanced Alliance pilots rarely experienced, excitement in the face of danger. Stop thinking and start feeling. Do whatever doesn't make sense. That's completely irrational. Exactly. Despite every instinct programmed into his enhanced genetics, Squadron Leader Vexstar made a decision that would have horrified his tactical instructors. He disengaged his fighter's optimization protocols and began flying on impulse. The change was immediate and dramatic. As Vexstar suddenly rolled inverted and fired at empty space, the Vorthan fighter that had been stalking him flew directly into his weapons fire while trying to execute a perfectly calculated intercept course across the battle. Other Alliance pilots began following Sarah's example. They stopped flying efficiently and started flying irrationally. They ignored optimal targeting solutions and fired when instinct told them to. They abandoned formation flying and began moving, like they were dodging predators in some primordial forest. The effect on the Vorthan forces was profound. Enhanced Commander Zekmuth watched his tactical display with growing alarm as his perfectly optimized fighters began falling to Alliance craft that were flying in ways that defied all military logic. Recalculate. Engagement protocols, he ordered his crew. Adapt to new Alliance tactics. Commander, his tactical officer reported with barely contained confusion. We cannot establish new protocols to counter tactics that have no pattern. There must be a pattern. All military engagement follows logical progression. Not this, Commander. Their movements appear to be based on individual impulse rather than tactical calculation. On the Harmony's edge, Admiral Corvash watched the impossible battle unfolding on his screens. His squadron, which should have been decimated in minutes, was not only surviving but beginning to gain the upper hand against superior numbers. Dr. Zethkar, he said over the communications channel. Your assessment of the human's performance? The doctor's voice carried a note of wonder. Admiral, her genetic defects appear to be providing capabilities we never anticipated. Her chaotic decision-making process is proving superior to enhanced optimization in this specific scenario. As the battle continued, Sarah found herself diving toward the lead Vorthan destroyer once again. But this time, instead of random targeting, she followed an instinct that seemed to come from nowhere. Her weapons locked onto a specific section of the ship's hull, a section that... 3 days had passed since Sarah learned about her genetic incompatibility with Alliance enhancement technology. She had spent every waking hour in the ship's library and combat simulation center, absorbing everything she could about the Vorthan Empire and their military tactics. The more she learned, the more her determination grew. The Vorthans were indeed formidable opponents. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with chitinous exoskeletons and 4 powerful arms, they had been genetically engineered for perfect warfare. Their reflexes were 3 times faster than most Alliance species, their strength could crush steel, and their tactical processing capabilities allowed them to analyze and respond to combat situations in microseconds. But as Sarah studied their combat footage, she began to notice something the Alliance analysts seemed to have missed. Computer. Replay Vorthan combat engagement Sigma 7, timestamp 14 minutes. 30 seconds, she said to the ship's AI system. The holographic display showed a pitched battle on a rocky asteroid. Enhanced Alliance soldiers, their movements fluid and precisely coordinated, fought against a squad of Vorthan warriors. The Alliance forces moved with mechanical efficiency, each motion optimized for maximum effect. The Vorthans moved differently. Their enhanced genetics made them faster and stronger, but their tactics were predictable. Every Vorthan warrior in the footage responded to threats in nearly identical ways. Their genetic optimization had given them perfect reflexes, but it had also made them perfectly predictable. Interesting, Sarah murmured, making notes on her tablet. Computer, show me engagement recordings where Alliance forces achieved victory against superior Vorthan numbers. As she studied battle after battle, a pattern began to emerge. The Alliance's few victories came not from superior enhancement or optimization, but from moments of unpredictability. Times when enhanced Alliance soldiers acted irrationally, made seemingly poor tactical choices that somehow worked, or responded to situations in ways that confounded Vorthan analysis systems. The door to the library chimed, and Dr. Zethkar entered. His scales were a deep blue, indicating concern. Miss Chun, you've been here for 12 hours straight. You need rest and nutrition. Sarah looked up from her studies, her eyes bright with excitement. Doctor, I've been analyzing Vorthan combat patterns. I think there's something the Alliance has been missing. Dr. Zethkar's scales shifted to a skeptical orange. Miss Chun, our best military analysts have been studying the Vorthans for decades. What could you possibly have discovered in a few days? They're too perfect, Sarah said, standing and gesturing to the holographic displays around her. Look at these engagement patterns. Every Vorthan soldier responds to identical stimuli in identical ways. Their genetic optimization has made them incredibly capable, but also incredibly predictable. The doctor approached the display, his scientific curiosity overriding his skepticism. Even if that were true, it wouldn't matter. Their optimization still makes them superior to any unenhanced being in terms of raw capability. But what if raw capability isn't everything? Sarah pulled up a specific battle sequence. Look at this engagement. A single enhanced Alliance soldier managed to defeat 3 Vorthan warriors by doing something completely irrational. He ignored cover, charged directly at superior numbers, and somehow caught them off guard. Dr. Zethkar studied the footage. That appears to be a malfunction in his enhancement programming. He should have been court-martialed for such reckless behavior. Should have been, yes. But it worked. Sarah's eyes gleamed with an idea that was rapidly forming. Doctor, what if the chaos in human genetics isn't a flaw? What if it's a feature? Before the doctor could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed as the ship's AI announced in a calm voice, "Red alert, Vorthan vessels detected." All personnel to battle stations. The ship shuddered as it changed course, and Sarah could hear the distant hum of weapon systems powering up. Dr. Zethkar's scales shifted to a deep red, indicating fear. "We need to get you to the secure section immediately," he said, moving toward the door, but Sarah didn't follow. Instead, she pulled up the ship's tactical display on the library's main screen. 3 Vorthan destroyers had appeared from hyperspace and were moving to intercept the Harmony's edge. "Doctor, how long until they reach us?" "Miss Chun, we need to move now. The secure sections are designed to protect civilians during combat." "How long?" Sarah insisted. Dr. Zethkar checked his communicator with a trembling hand. "Approximately 15 minutes until they're in weapons range." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. She thought about her crewmates aboard the Deep Current, about the unpredictable tactics she'd observed in the combat footage, and about the chaotic genetics that Alliance computers couldn't understand. "Doctor, I need you to take me to Admiral Korvash." "Right now?" "Absolutely not. You're a civilian and you need to be protected." Sarah grabbed the doctor's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Doctor, I think I know how to help. But I need to speak with the Admiral immediately." Something in her voice, a certainty that hadn't been there before, made Dr. Zethkar pause. "Miss Chun, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that maybe my defective genetics are exactly what the Alliance needs." Admiral Korvash stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge, his 4 arms working the tactical controls as his crew prepared for battle. The Vorthan ships were larger than his own vessel, and they would have enhanced crews with perfect reflexes and coordination. His own enhanced officers were capable, but he knew the odds were not in their favor. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "Dr. Zethkar is requesting immediate access to the bridge. He says the human civilian has critical tactical information." Korvash's large eyes narrowed. "The human? She's supposed to be in protective custody. Should I deny the request, sir?" The Admiral considered for a moment. They were facing superior odds, and any information that might help would be welcome. "Grant them access, but keep security nearby." Moments later, the bridge doors opened and Dr. Zethkar entered. Followed by Sarah, she looked small and fragile among the enhanced Alliance officers, but her expression was determined. "Admiral," Sarah said without preamble, "I want to fight." A ripple of disbelief went through the bridge crew. Several officers made sounds that could only be described as alien laughter. "Miss Chun," Admiral Korvash said gently, "we've discussed this. Your genetics make enhancement impossible. Without enhancement, you would be killed within seconds of engaging Vorthan forces. What if I don't need enhancement?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "What if my unenhanced genetics are actually an advantage?" The Admiral's expression grew concerned. "Miss Chun, I understand you wish to avenge your crewmates, but, Admiral, please listen to me." Sarah moved to the tactical display, her fingers dancing across the controls with surprising familiarity. "I've been studying Vorthan combat patterns for 3 days. They're predictable because they're optimized. Every enhanced soldier, Vorthan or Alliance, follows logical tactical protocols." She pulled up several battle sequences on the main screen. "But look at these engagements. The times when Alliance forces succeeded against superior odds, it was because someone did something unpredictable, something that seemed wrong but worked anyway." Dr. Zethkar's scales had shifted to a worried purple. "Admiral, the human may be experiencing psychological trauma from her losses. Her suggestions are not rational." "Maybe," Sarah said, turning to face the bridge crew. "That's exactly the point." The ship shuddered as the Vorthan vessels moved closer. Admiral Korvash checked his tactical readouts and saw that they had 12 minutes before the engagement would begin. "Explain quickly, Miss Chun." Sarah took a deep breath. "Human genetics are chaotic compared to other Alliance species, right? We have massive redundancies, unpredictable variations, and what your computers call junk DNA. But what if that chaos translates to unpredictable behavior in combat?" She gestured to the tactical display. "Enhanced soldiers think logically, process information efficiently, and respond optimally to threats. But what if the Vorthan analysis systems are designed to counter logical, optimal responses? Admiral Korvash was beginning to understand where she was going. You're suggesting that an unenhanced human might be able to confuse their targeting systems? More than that, Sarah said, her excitement growing. I'm suggesting that my defective genetics might make me impossible for them to predict or counter. The Admiral looked around at his bridge crew, all of whom appeared skeptical. But they were facing superior odds with conventional tactics unlikely to succeed. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah straightened her shoulders. Let me pilot one of your fighters. Give me a chance to engage them directly. The bridge erupted in protests from the crew. Dr. Zethkar's scales turned almost black with alarm. Miss Chun, that would be suicide, the doctor protested. Your reaction times, your physical capabilities, my reaction times are unenhanced, Sarah interrupted. Which means they're unpredictable. My physical capabilities are baseline human, which means they don't follow any optimization patterns the Vorthans would expect. Admiral Korvash was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. Even if your theory is correct, you have no combat training, no experience with our fighter systems? Sarah smiled for the first time since. The medical bay of the Galactic Alliance vessel Harmony's Edge hummed with advanced technology that could diagnose and treat ailments across 1,000 different species. Dr. Zethkar, a tall reptilian physician with scales that shifted from green to blue when he was deep in thought, stared at the readouts on his screen with growing confusion. This cannot be correct, he muttered, his forked tongue flicking out in frustration. The genetic scan results for the human female lying unconscious on the medical table showed readings that defied everything he knew about biological compatibility with their enhancement protocols. Commander Sarah, Chun had been found floating in an escape pod 3 days ago, the sole survivor of a human research vessel that had been attacked by the Vorthan Empire. Her ship's records indicated she was a marine biologist, nothing more. Yet something about her genetic structure was setting off every alarm in his sophisticated medical systems. The door to the medical bay slid open with a soft hiss, and Fleet Admiral Korvash entered. The massive, bear-like alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, his thick fur a deep brown color that spoke of his homeworld's harsh winters. His forearms moved with practiced military precision, 2 clasped behind his back, while the other 2 gestured as he spoke. Doctor, what is the status of our human guest? Kovash's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The Council is eager to begin the standard enhancement procedures, so she can contribute to our war effort against the Vorthans. Dr. Zethkar's scales shifted to a darker blue, a sign of his distress. Admiral, I'm afraid there's a significant problem. The human's genetic structure is completely incompatible with our enhancement protocols. According to every test I've run, her DNA is considered defective by our standards. The Admiral's large eyes narrowed. Explain. Our enhancement technology works by optimizing genetic sequences, removing weaknesses, and amplifying beneficial traits. It's how we've been able to create soldiers capable of fighting the Vorthans on equal terms. The doctor pulled up a holographic display of DNA strands. But this human's genetic code shows patterns we've never seen before. Massive redundancies, seemingly random variations, and what our computers classify as junk DNA comprising nearly 90% of her genome. Korvash leaned forward, studying the display. Are you telling me she cannot be enhanced? Worse than that, Admiral. If we attempt to use our standard protocols on her, the genetic restructuring would likely kill her within hours. Her DNA is too chaotic, too unpredictable. Our technology simply cannot work with such an inferior genetic foundation. On the medical table, Sarah began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered, and she groaned softly as consciousness slowly returned. The first thing she noticed was the ceiling above her, covered in panels that pulsed with a soft blue light. The second thing she noticed was the voices speaking in what sounded like a mixture of growls and electronic chirps. She's awakening, Dr. Zethkar observed, checking his instruments. Her brain patterns are stabilizing, though they're unlike anything in our medical databases. Sarah sat up slowly, her hand instinctively reaching for her head as a wave of dizziness washed over her. When her vision cleared, she found herself staring at two beings that looked like they'd stepped out of a science fiction movie. The reptilian creature wore what appeared to be a medical uniform, while the massive, four-armed bear-like being was clearly military. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "What happened to my ship? Where's my crew?" Admiral Corvash stepped forward, his demeanor formal but not unkind. "You are aboard the Alliance vessel Harmony's Edge, human. I am Fleet Admiral Corvash of the Ursine Confederation. You were found in an escape pod after your vessel was destroyed by Vorthan forces? I regret to inform you that there were no other survivors." Sarah's eyes closed as the memories came flooding back. The attack had come without warning. The Vorthans had appeared from hyperspace just as her research team was cataloging specimens from a newly discovered ocean world. The research vessel Deep Current had been defenseless against the massive Vorthan warships. "My team," she whispered. "Dr. Martinez, Lieutenant Brooks, everyone?" "Gone," Corvash said quietly. "You alone survived." Dr. Zethkar approached with a medical scanner in his clawed hands. "Miss Chun, if I may? I need to run a few more tests to ensure you're fully recovered." Sarah nodded absently, still processing the loss of her colleagues. The scanner hummed as it passed over her body, and she watched the doctor's expression grow more puzzled with each reading. "Admiral," Dr. Zethkar said, his voice tight with concern. "These readings are even more anomalous than before. Her cellular regeneration rate is completely outside normal parameters for any known species. And her neurological activity—" He paused, studying the scanner more closely. "It's unlike anything we've documented. Is that bad?" Sarah asked, looking between the two aliens. Admiral Corvash exchanged a meaningful look with the doctor before responding. "Miss Chun, we are currently at war with an empire known as the Vorthans. They are a ruthless species that seeks to dominate or destroy all other forms of life in the galaxy. The alliance has been formed by various species working together to stop them. What does that have to do with me? Our standard procedure is to enhance the genetic structure of all alliance personnel, optimizing them for combat, intelligence, and survival. This enhancement process has allowed us to stand against Vorthan forces that are naturally superior to most alliance species in terms of physical capabilities." Dr. Zethkar scales had shifted to an almost black color. "However, your genetic structure appears to be incompatible with our enhancement technology. In fact, our computers classify your DNA as severely defective." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Defective? What does that mean for me?" "It means," Admiral Corvash said slowly, "that we cannot enhance you to fight alongside our forces. Your genetics are too unstable, too chaotic for our technology to work with. I'm afraid you'll need to be relocated to a non-combat colony world where you can live out your life in safety." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had always been proud of her career as a marine biologist, her dedication to scientific research. Now she was being told that at the most fundamental level she was genetically inferior. "There has to be something," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "Some way I can help. My crew died fighting those monsters. I can't just hide on some colony world while others fight." Dr. Zethkar looked sympathetic but shook his head. "I'm sorry, but our enhancement protocols are the only way organic beings can match Vorthan capabilities. Without enhancement, you would be completely ineffective in combat. Your reaction times, strength, durability, and cognitive processing speed would all be insufficient." Admiral Corvash placed one of his large hands gently on Sarah's shoulder. "I know this is difficult to accept, but the genetic analysis is clear. Your DNA structure is simply too primitive and disorganized for modern enhancement technology." Sarah stared at the holographic display still showing her DNA structure. The swirling double helixes looked chaotic and random compared to the neat, organized patterns she assumed represented proper alien genetics. She felt a strange mixture of anger and shame building inside her. "How long do I have before you ship me off to this colony?" she asked quietly. The transport to Colony World 7 doesn't depart for another week, Admiral Corvash replied. Until then, you're welcome to remain here as our guest. Perhaps you can assist Dr. Zethkar with his research in a non-combat capacity. As the Admiral left the medical bay, Sarah continued staring at her genetic readouts. Dr. Zethkar busied himself with his equipment, occasionally glancing at her with what seemed like pity. "Doctor," Sarah said eventually, "what exactly makes Vorthan soldiers so dangerous?" The reptilian physician looked up from his work. "They are genetically engineered for warfare. Perfect genetic optimization, enhanced strength, speed, and intelligence. Their soldiers can operate for days without rest, heal from wounds that would kill most beings, and process tactical information at superhuman speeds. And your enhancement technology tries to match that?" "In essence, yes. We take the natural genetic structure of alliance species and optimize it, removing flaws and amplifying strengths. It's the only way we can create soldiers capable of standing against the Vorthans." Sarah nodded slowly. "What about humans who have already been enhanced? How do they perform?" Dr. Zethkar's expression grew troubled. "That's complicated. Humans have only recently joined the Alliance. The few who have undergone enhancement have shown mixed results. Some have performed adequately, though none have achieved the optimization levels we see in other species. Because of our defective genetics?" "Your species has a very unusual genetic structure," the doctor admitted. "Most Alliance species have what we call clean genetics, streamlined, efficient, with minimal redundancy. Human genetics appear to be the opposite. Chaotic, redundant, with vast amounts of apparently non-functional genetic material." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "Doctor, what would happen if someone with my particular genetic defects was exposed to combat without enhancement?" Dr. Zethkar's scales shifted to an alarmed yellow. "Miss Chung, you mustn't even consider such a thing. An unenhanced being facing Vorthan soldiers would be killed within seconds. It would be